Today's episode of Palmetto Primetime is proudly sponsored by the Ford and Ford Group. The Ford and Ford Group is here to help you with all of your nonprofit, legislative, and campaign needs. For more information, visit www.fordandfordgroup.com.
Welcome to Palmetto Primetime with Sarah A. Ford and Mandy Powers Norrell, where every week they will be talking about social justice issues. And now, here's Sarah and Mandy.
And we have two guests that I am so excited to have on our show. It's such an honor to have Mandy Matney and Liz Farrell here, who are just you can't talk about the Murdaugh case or what has happened in the trial or leading up to the trial without mentioning their names and have credibility in what you're talking about, because Mandy and Liz have been everywhere that news was happening in that case and did so many others. And we're so honored to have y'all join us on Palmetto Primetime. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I'm just excited that you guys are doing this. It made me so happy when I saw that y'all were launching a podcast. I'm going between you guys and you all, by the way, because I got an email the other day saying that y'all was cultural appropriation because I'm not from the South.
Y'all means all
rap.
So
that is rap.
Well, I've been here for 7 years and I just picked it up. Like most of my friends say it. But I sometimes say you guys, I don't know. Anyways,
but also Kansas
can we just
South to me
give you vicarious permission as somebody who grew up here that you say it naturally. It's
just a better word.
Easier.
It's just clingier. It's less clunky. That's the word that I'm looking for.
It is.
But yeah,
it is.
And
other languages have a y'all, like vous in French is not too.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That's a good point.
Is
it Southern France? Is it Southern France that can only?
Yeah. It's just. All of France has a y'all.
All of France can say it. That's fun.
I did not think we would start this.
Other languages.
Sorry,
but I'm cool with it.
I'm really bad at. I mean, Liz is the organized one. I am not. So
I will not tell you about her desktop, but it's bad, guys. I've never I've worked with cops who don't or are not organized, but I saw Mandy's the other day and I was like, I'm not going to talk about that with you.
Every time Liz is around my desktop, I always cover it up and google.com and make it really big so she can't see
anything here.
And I honestly do the same thing because I don't want to see it. It's just if the Murdaugh case exploded, and right now I have 3 monitors, if it exploded in various pieces all over 3 monitors, that's what my desktop would look like. And
it's very Homeland. It looks like a murder board on her computer.
But no connections. It's it's terrible. It's horrifying, actually. I need to fix it, and it keeps getting worse.
Well, can I say that I love all of the references y'all make to television shows because 1,000% right on. Like when y'all were talking about White Lotus, I was like, oh my God, it's so freaking good. But also you guys need to definitely watch The Godfather. Please remedy that quickly.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Please
we do. Because Eric references it all the time. And
it's oh my God.
Yeah.
It's a great movie, but you've got me wanting to watch White Lotus now because it's got to.
You have to. It's the second season is so much better than the first, but you'll love the first season because you love Hawaii.
And the first season
is.
First was in Hawaii.
Yeah, and I was actually listening to a Katie Couric's podcast where she interviewed the Mike White, the creator of White Lotus. And it was fascinating because he was saying basically it was this idea that to film a show during COVID, they wanted a one location, everything. It was really hard to do multiple locations in a show like that. So that's kind of how the White Lotus, and he lives in Hawaii. But yeah, it's a great show. I love it. And I probably watch too much TV, which is why we make a lot of TV references.
Well, I'm right there with y'all, so I'm glad.
Y'all deserve it. I mean, you
For
deserve
sure.
any kind of escape.
I love TV.
You're dealing with some heavy stuff.
It's good, and I love Vanderpump Rules. So I got to say that, Liz, like, it's mindless. Like, the work that we do on the regular is so intense. You just have to just turn something mindless on and say, "Oh my God, Sandoval! Like, what is wrong with you?"
Right. And I will say this. I'm going to be a little more academic about this. I think that Vanderpump Rules is good for conflict resolution. I think it makes you realize, because people speak up for themselves on that show, and then they get over it. And then it's not like this. Sometimes, obviously this Sandoval thing is not going. I don't think that's going to work out well. But yes, I started watching it from because I want to catch up. I started having to watch season 7 and 8 again because I needed to remind myself what happened to get to season 10. So I'm in the middle of that right now, just catching up. And yeah, look, I think reality shows, Mandy, you're like a 90-day fiance academic as well. Like there are things that you get out of these shows that are just really important for your mental well-being.
Right. And I mean, I've learned a lot about different cultures from 90 Day Fiance and how they treat women. Like I know it all. And I love the show. I can't get enough of it. It's crazy. Like, and when the war in Ukraine was happening, there's so many Ukrainian women on that show. And I was checking on all of them, making sure they're all okay. Like, what about Yara's parents? Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's just, I think everybody needs just a really, it's dumb, but also you can always learn something from even stupid stuff. So I love it. Mandy, what's your trash show? Do you have one?
Housewives. Real Housewives.
Oh, yeah.
Salt Lake City, Potomac. Yeah. I love Real Housewives.
Those are really
I watched that with Emma. I don't know any pop culture. But the Salt Lake.
Yeah, Liz watches that one.
So,
yeah, I watch Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and New York. Those are my two go-to ones. Yeah.
I want to get into like your friendship, because when I think I connected with Mandy back in 2018. And then as we got to know each other more, she just kept saying, "You've got to meet my best friend. You're going to love her." And so, but you guys have a really special friendship. And I just want to hear y'all talk about that, because it's unique and really extra special.
Do you think Mandy, it's because we're the only ones who didn't put the other one down for our obsession about the Murdaughs for so long? I mean, it pre-existed that, so
it's also just trauma bonding, man. Like, unfortunately, not to say that we wouldn't be friends otherwise, but there was just a lot, even like before the Murdaugh stuff started, when we were at the Packet, I think we bonded just on like curiosity and calling out crap. I think we both
laughter too, though. I think we found the same things funny and the same people ridiculous and same scenarios ridiculous. And
there was a lot of ridiculous going on at the Packet. I would love if I had like a different life, and Liz would be the perfect like executive producer, writer. There needs to be a good show about a small town newsroom.
Yes, there does.
Because nobody ever gets it right. And it's just the most, it's fascinating. And there's always characters, and there's always just, we never had like a boring couple days at the Packet. Like things would get boring, and then something super weird would happen. And Liz and I would just laugh about that. But we also just were able to, Liz was one of the first people that I've ever met in my life when I would find something crazy, and I never had a person to really go to and be like, "This is so crazy, hear me out." And like, "Oh, you're onto something." Instead, I used to find crazy things and be like, "Well, that's nuts. I'm too scared to touch that." Moving on. But Liz was Liz and I made that connection on like a couple cases. Remember that one?
You don't have to say it. White Marsh.
Whitewater.
I say White Marsh. White water.
Whitewater.
Whitewater. Yeah.
Whitewater.
Did you see that John Jakes died?
Yes.
Came to mind. So there's this street on Hilton Head that we went through all the property records for every house, and we're like, what is going on here? Because every house had somebody either famous or like locally significant in it, and there were all these things that were happening on that road. And so we would.
There were 2 deaths. There were 2 deaths on that road within it's a super, super fancy part of Hilton Head. And there was, sorry I interrupted you.
No,
2 deaths on that road.
So we were
very close together.
We were going to have a podcast called Widewater, and it would just be about like these intriguing lives, but also this, like, we were convinced that this woman whose death was ruled a suicide was actually being chased by somebody else. And I'm still convinced of that, but
I am too. And it's related.
Yeah. And then the woman there were 2 suicides basically that happened very close in proximity. And so there's that.
And an attempted murder.
Yeah, that's right.
What the hell is happening? Oh my God.
I'm telling you, Hilton Head is crazy.
It's so crazy. So is Beaufort and Bluffton. There's all sorts of just nonsense. But I think what you're saying, Mandy, like, one thing is, like, you can ask these difficult questions of people by yourself, and it's very nerve-wracking. But when you have 2 people working on a story, you embolden each other and you make each other stronger by just their mere presence and understanding, and then their silent encouragement. So, like, having Mandy there with me made me a stronger reporter because I wasn't afraid to ask a question or be even more snippy than I think I can be. So I think there's sort of that performative nature of, you kind of want to impress the other person by what you're willing to do as a reporter. And I think that any young reporter, especially women, should partner up because it really does. I mean, the Woodward and Bernstein were a thing for a reason. So I think
it's so great about women when we're able to build each other up and help each other get better instead of, ripping each other apart. And you guys are just an incredible example of that.
Yeah. And I imagine you're a threat to a lot of men. And I mean, I don't imagine that. I've seen that. I mean, there are, because you've been sort of, targeted for people disagreeing, but in a disagreeable way. And so, because I think part of that is your extreme success. You have something really special in what you're doing together, and you've risen to the top very, very quickly. And I think that human instinct kind of comes in from people who've been kind of trying to do that for a really long time and haven't been able to, so they find ways to criticize you. And so just can you talk about that and how, I mean, I see the 2 of you supporting each other through that. I see you supporting other journalists, especially women, and even women non-journalists who experience similar things. And so, but it's a unique thing that you've kind of gone through. Can you talk about some of that?
Yeah. A couple things, like, as women, I especially feel like it's really hard to stick up for yourself. Because when you do, you sound crazy. They make you sound crazy. They make you, what else is there? Selfish, wanting attention, emotional. There's just all of these like tropes that they attack you with immediately. Mm-hmm. But with Liz, I mean, especially in 2021, when there was just a lot of nasty stuff being thrown at me, I would text her so many times of like, do I respond to this? Do I say anything? Am I wrong here? Like, am I the crazy one? Because as women too, I mean, you just are taught to second guess yourself, and you're taught kind of, if all these men are saying that, then there must be something, maybe they're right. But Liz would be like, no, you are right. They're wrong. Like, let me get at him. And
yeah, I got in trouble
it was
for that, by the way.
Yeah, she did.
I did. There was Jim Griffin was coming from Mandy in like a big way and like a confusing way too, because it was like, why would you should focus on your client, not the reporter. But I defended you, and I forget which one, if it was when I told him that he doesn't he have a script to read for the Today Show or something. I got somebody printed out my tweets defending you and gave them to the chief deputy, and so I got told that I had to stop, and that's when I quit. Actually, it's like a couple weeks later. I was like, yeah, I'll stop, but I don't like the idea of Mandy standing out there alone, and especially during that time period. It was like, I say this a lot, but it was like a huge leap of faith for her to jump off the cliff right after the murders, when she brought Stephen and Gloria's name into this. And unfortunately for Mandy, like, you found out the hard way that people aren't always, I mean, they can be really terrible. They can be really cut right to the bone. And I think our friendship, we both understand that feeling of people saying the worst things you already think about yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that is like a cruelty that you have to learn to get over. And it's hard because, again, like, these are the things that were in our head already. And it's like, oh, you did notice that I suck. Thank you. Thank you for pointing it out. So it's good to have another person to cheer you on and keep you from that voice in your head, you know?
We were both raised Irish Catholic, too, and I feel that was something else we definitely bonded on, was Catholic guilt and Catholic school guilt.
Me three.
Oh, welcome to the club. We should start a support group.
Right. Southern Baptist guilt. Similar.
Do they shame you a lot?
Oh yeah,
culture?
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, Liz and I definitely bonded on that. We both had just so much guilt and shame built up in our heads, and shaking that off of each other, because we knew, like, if somebody said that about me, I know where my mind would go, and it's like, get out of there, don't even look at it, you know. And everybody.
How many times did I text you like, you're Mandy effing Matney?
A million, and I was like, I'm not.
Before anyone even knew her name, like, that's just that you have to remind yourself that you are this other person that is great, and like, not the person that your brain is telling you. And yeah, that's my favorite go-to advice for people, is to say their name and change their middle name to the F word, because it really
helps.
Yeah, it does make you feel, remind you that you have a bigger goal here.
Yeah,
Exactly. And like, that's so important to have those friends that are like, I don't care what everybody else is saying about you. I know you and you know you. So, you know, everybody's got the haters, but, you know, you're Liz effing Farrell and you're Mandy effing Matney. Like, that's just, it's so important to have those friends that build you up like that.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, talking about like women, and I would never be in the place that I am in right now if I didn't have a ton. I mean, Liz, number one, but a huge network of supportive women. And like, that's why I'm here right now, because there were so many women that were like bigger than me or whatever at the time, that kind of took me under their wing and helped me in one way or another. And I just want to keep doing that because I know how important that is. It's so important to support each other, and it's so important to lift each other up and not give into the stereotype of like, women hate each other, blah, 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 which I think was created by men. So
For
that
sure. Yeah.
like, everything I'm coming to find out was like, oh, that's so men could be cooler in society,
Right.
And things would be a lot easier for them if they just made women catfight all the time and not stop and look at, like,
us out of,
what are you doing?
Right. It keeps us distracted and out of power. So it's a way to hold on to power.
Yeah. And so we figured that out. So it's a dangerous weapon.
But I also think, Mandy, don't you think there was times when it worked against us too at the packet? I think people read into our friendship as mean girl behavior because, and honestly, it astonished me because like I said, I have a skill when it comes to telling people off. But at the same time, I also think the majority of my skills are spent being nice to people. So I think our connection, like with each other, and just how we understood our job and how we were able to just so perfectly complement each other and how we did our jobs, I think that was intimidating to people. So this sort of Liz and Mandy became one word. And that I think is carried through even with the podcast and everything. I think Liz and Mandy becomes, or Mandy and Liz, however you want to look, like it becomes a single word. And people sort of extrapolate what we believe or what we think or how we feel about something. And they're often wrong about it because we're not sitting there thinking like, oh, we're so great and everybody else isn't. Like, that's just not who we are. So it always I think confidence can work, like a friendship that where we bolster each other can also work against you sometimes. I don't know if you feel that way, Mandy. It's just thinking about some of the criticism we got at the packet.
Yeah, and I haven't thought about that. It's very similar to, everybody sees what the trolls say every once in a while. I've gotten a lot better about it, and yeah, I mean, the trolls kind of say the same thing that certain bosses at the packet, which like Mandy and Liz are a bunch of mean girl bullies. Meh, 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 meh. And it's terrible because it's the opposite of the truth. And like I said, it's hard for women to support themselves, to stand up for themselves and to stand up for each other because all of these people come back with these stereotypes of you're being a mean girl and you're ganging up on whatever, which is the furthest thing from the truth. And I think a lot of people don't want, and I think a lot of people are honestly jealous of our friendship because they wish that they had somebody like Liz on their side. And I think the root of a lot of criticism is jealousy. And
you guys have experienced, I think, an extreme level of jealousy coming for you, not, for your friendship in part, because what you have is very special. And there are a lot of people who have people in their lives that they say, this is my friend, but they know that that isn't someone that they would really trust with the deepest parts of their soul. And when they see the friendship that you guys have, it's something that is really enviable. And so they have a lot of reasons to envy you. They've got your extreme success, your fast success, seemingly, and I know y'all worked on it for a very long time, but to a lot of people it looks fast because they haven't been paying attention. But so I think that jealousy is very much the root of a lot of the vitriol that you sometimes get in the comments. But I'm glad that you find ways to avoid it, because it's just not coming from a legitimate place.
I think our friendship can be intimidating to men, honestly. Like, I'm just thinking back again to like, there have been men in our lives with power that just can't handle it because I think they again misconstrue like we're two people supporting each other, but they treat us like we're this fort. Like, and maybe that's good, and that maybe we should embrace that. But it's almost like we intimidate people before we even open our mouths, and that is, for me, that's hard to deal with. I don't know. Like,
yeah, I think both of us have a very we can come off as very not mean, but hard, like very hard exterior of like, I don't know if I like, but we're both so incredibly delicate and soft on the inside. We're just like squishy little bunnies on the inside. I don't know, just very fragile, soft, and a lot of people don't see that side of us, but like, man, we have it. Like, we're both always worried. We're both always feeling guilty. We're both always feeling sad about something. Like, we misunderstood. Just we both just have a ton of emotions that are always softening us up.
The beginning of the show, because I cried.
Oh, I can't wait.
But fragile, I love using fragile like a bomb, you know, like you have to be careful, you know, it's okay to have all of these emotions and things. And I think that really, you know, hearing other women talk about having, you know, all of these worries, emotions, feelings, it's okay. And we're taught like, don't do this, don't be emotional, but I know it makes me a better lawyer to be emotional and connect and have empathy and all of that. So.
And to care. Like, that's the thing with journalism too. It's like, okay, so you want me to be completely unbiased and like just not care. No, these are like people involved in these things and their lives are at stake. Like, of course I'm going to care. And like, that's insane for me to think that like you have to be so robotic and treat an extremely evil person the same as you're treating a total victim. That's crazy to me.
It is.
Right. That's such a good point. I'd love to hear from like each of you what you admire about the other.
Do you want
Who wants to go first?
Like you first.
I admire your ability to not go first. Well, first I want to say like, because there is an age I don't know if you can tell there's an age difference. I'm older than Mandy, and what she teaches me is that because I'm not going to blame it on being Gen X, but it sort of is like we sort of have this like doomsday feeling of like, oh, that's just, yeah, you have to wait, and, you know, this is how it is. Like, you just get criticized and that's it. What I admire in her is her ability, like from the start with this podcast, no matter how hard it was, she still was able to say like, I'm going to call out bad behavior when I see it. And I feel like I'm more weak in that regard because I'll be like, oh no, let's all just live fine. Let's all get along. We'll be fine. So her doing that, I realized, was at the very root of the kind of journalism that we both appreciate and want, and the kind of journalism we want to do is not to just excuse that behavior. And I think looking at like Jeffrey Epstein and Harvey Weinstein and like all these stories of these like monsters that had controlled their atmosphere, their ecosystem for so long, it took people finally speaking up. And I don't think that we realize that like that's in all aspects of life, like not just the big things, but the little things too. So that's what I really admire that from the podcast part. But from you guys have no idea how good this woman is at breaking news. And Mandy was the queen. I mean, like, she just is so good, reactive, not thinking, just so focused for somebody who has a terrible desktop. Just so incredibly focused. And not only that, she knows how to get people to read things, get people to watch things or listen to things by how she sells it in terms of headlines and knowing what photos go with things. Like, these are really important things for journalists and they're undervalued. Mandy sort of was like part of the new generation coming in. And in order to get people to read your work, you have to have somebody who understands what people want to read. So she ultimately knew how to pick stories and write them in a way that gave the important stuff, but also kind of, I don't want to say trick them, Mandy, but like you got them in there. And like that's just such a huge thing, because the work we do means nothing unless we get people to read it. So she taught me, I think, how to do that, how to write the headline about the most interesting element, and you know, how to think about the little things of what your key card looks like on your video. God, you would get so mad about key cards with videos. Key frame. Sorry, I didn't get it right. But she would get so mad because people would just put this garbage photo, and that ended up being the screenshot for your video. And so,
which is shared with your story, and it's like your story just looks dumb. There's like a giant blur. That happen all the time.
That's so true, though. That's so true.
Yeah, and one last thing, she's also somebody who understands people need space and time, and you know, she as a friend understands, like, she has a lot of empathy. So I think that's a lot. I did.
Oh, that was so sweet.
Yeah, I love that.
I should make a long list because it's gonna go on forever.
My joke. You say my jokes.
No, Liz is the funniest person by far that I know. Somebody said on Twitter, and I meant to retweet it, but I don't have Twitter on my phone. Like, I can't retweet from my phone because I have such a problem with trolls and stuff. So whenever I tweet, I have to be on my desktop. Anyways, I saw this tweet on my phone and I meant to retweet it, and then I forgot about it, and that's my life right now because it's so ridiculous. But somebody tweeted the other day that you should have a comedy tour and that they would be the first at the door, and I totally agree because you are the funniest part. Like, Liz is not only can she like drag vampires into the sunlight and cut them into pieces and embarrass them and make them look like the terrible people that they are, but she's so funny about it, and she says so many things that I would never come up with in a million years. And it's just the podcast, like, it's just such a dark subject, and I think we were able to keep going, and I think a big reason why we were able to keep an audience going is because of Liz and her light and humor that she brought. And so, because it just would get too dark, it just it gets to a point where no one could listen. If we didn't have Liz, it would have just gotten to a point where I was just sad all the time and I didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so, and that's another thing we get criticized for, like, oh, they're laughing about murder. It's like, everyone very close to this knows that you have to laugh sometimes because otherwise you'll just be in tears. And y'all know that as lawyers too. It's just something as human beings that you have to do. So Liz can make people laugh better than anybody that I've ever met. And she's an amazing, amazing writer. I mean, I was envious of her work from day one at the Packet. Like, yeah, you wrote a shark story that I was very embarrassed. I was like, I want to not like. I wrote a shark story months later, and I was like, this isn't as good as Liz's. I was embarrassed by that
Hemingway one. The one,
yes, because it was just beautiful.
Thank you.
And very smart. And yeah, I wrote a bullshit one like a few months later, and was like, this. But yeah, your writing is just creative and smart and just amazing. You're much better with words than I am, as I am struggling with them right now. But also Liz is extremely, extremely good with sources and source confidentiality. I mean, people, ever since we were at the Packet, she always was the one that had the most sources. I really didn't know how to have off-the-record sources before I was around Liz. I didn't know what to do with them. I didn't know, like, it's a complicated thing that nobody teaches, or they did not teach me in journalism school about, like, how to develop a relationship with a source and how to do all that very important stuff. And Liz just does it so well, but she also does it so well, and all of her sources know this, that like, if you're feeding Liz Farrell information, you're not off the hook for, like, if you have any bad behavior. Liz she always has just a strong moral compass, an extremely strong moral compass, and that is something that I totally respect and value in you, and you never waver from it. I've never seen you waver in your moral compass in what are we at? 27 years that I've known you.
Did you say 27?
No, I was like 2016. I was doing math.
I thought you said 27 too. I was like,
no,
okay.
2016 is when I got here. Yeah. In our little Irish Catholic community.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with Liz and Mandy.
When I was in the legislature, I saw firsthand the wonderful work of the Ford and Ford Group. The Ford and Ford Group is a one-stop shop for all of your nonprofit, legislative, and campaign needs. They bring you experienced, passionate, and personalized consulting. Their services will take your work to the next level. Good ideas need a good strategy, hard work, and energy to come to life, and that's what you get when you work with the Ford and Ford Group. They're ready to help make your world a better place to live for all. Your mission is their mission. Get more information at fordandfordgroup.com. That's fordandfordgroup.com. And now we're back with Mandy and Liz. So, guys,
I have a gazillion questions. I'm sorry. Like, I want to be like, can you girls, like, can we stay for supper? Let's go out for drinks. Like, all of this.
You guys were not in the courtroom during the trial. And, you know, I understand why you weren't. Some people had some opinions about that. Can you talk about why you made the decision to be outside the courtroom and how?
What a way to find out.
I'm sorry.
Do people really have opinions about that? Like, you mean like other journalists?
I don't know. I just saw a few things. Maybe they weren't opinions. I take everything. Like, I want to go
there
and defend
for the voir dire. Yeah, the jury selection, but it didn't make sense for us to be in the courtroom. You get a better view from the TV, and we already have everyone in that court. We already have our sources. So I understand why reporters would be in there, because they want to network, and there's things that you can definitely see that we couldn't see. But for the most part, I mean, we found our community and could do our jobs better. Mandy, you could speak about that with what we did during the time.
Yeah, I mean, a couple things. And I have no problem saying this, like, I have extreme anxiety from this entire story. I'm scared for my safety a lot, and being in that courtroom is honestly, I didn't want. It just makes me extremely nervous. And then you have to be without your phone, and you have to like be in this environment with all these people that hate you. Like, a lot of people in that courtroom hate me, and that just like, I could not physically do that, and also physically do my job. So the job at the end of the day is what you're supposed to do, right? And this was like the big crescendo. This is the big, all of this is built up to this, right? And so the number one thing was to be able to be safe, understand what's going on in the court, to like be in a mental and physical place where you can actually focus on what's going on. You can actually analyze it. And also, Liz and I both are such like deep thinkers. So as something's going on in court, it is so much better for us to process it while we can look up files, and while we can talk to each other about it and say that that's a big moment and things like that. But I mean, I think, honestly, I think a lot of people were there just to be seen, and I don't care about that. I don't want to be on camera. I don't care. It wasn't worth that was another thing that I've learned throughout this entire story, is just like, you can think about what people will think of you. You can think about what they can think of. Are you a real reporter? But you got to think of yourself first, and you got to think of your listeners and doing the job that you're supposed to be doing. And the people that care about stuff like that, A, they have no idea what they're talking about, and B, are also just so wrapped up in this old school, like, you have to physically be in these places. A lot of the most important work that I've done in this story has been over the phone, and I can't stress that enough. Like, times have changed. It's not knocking on the door journalism that's busting down the system. It's different now. And I just think that people fall into these, they're not into the courtroom. And also because we were really right about everything, and just have to say that. And people find the tiniest things to criticize us about, because they can't criticize us on most other things.
That's such a good point. I didn't think of that.
That's so true.
Well, my other thing was like, y'all are watching the jury. How come your predictions were crap this entire time?
Right.
Like, you were in the courtroom. I wasn't in the courtroom, and I knew what was going to, like.
Yeah.
I told I told Zeke earlier, I was like, with everything, you guys have really been right about pretty much everything. I was like, oh my God. I mean, I'd be like learning to play the trumpet if I were y'all. Just like, hello, people. Like, and I think that you guys have just get so much crap needlessly because I think you're right, Mandy, like Mandy Powers Norrell, like people are just jealous for, obviously because you guys are amazing, but also because you've been able to use social media and things that a lot of other journalists have not been able to kind of pull into their style. And you guys have made it work brilliantly. And you're like, here we go. So that's awesome.
We're also former editors, both of us. So we were in charge of people, and we would never put people in a room where we couldn't communicate with them when the option existed to watch it on TV and see the faces of the defendant and the people in the audience rather than his back. And you can hear better. And I mean, honestly, it was much better. As somebody who's covered stuff like that, like we both know that was a much better vantage point. The only thing you're missing is the ability to hang out during their breaks where they, the cocktail hour that would happen, I guess, in the middle, during the day, during trial. But that we're good.
Yeah, I don't care about that.
Yeah.
I don't want to see a lot of those people.
No, we had a show to put out too, and we had a live chat with people who were watching with us. So we had like 2,000 people we were watching with at all times, and we would answer their questions and we would comment, and it was such a good community that came up around that. And I kind of missed them, honestly. I missed the people that we were talking with every day.
We need to do some more YouTube chat. We should do one of this with our listener communities, with you guys too. That would be great.
Yeah.
Because they're awesome. They're like, it's mostly women. There's a few guys every once in a while who are super cool.
Yeah.
But they're just the most supportive people, and they're so I love our listeners to death. It's just a very unique kind community where like you don't have to worry about trolls. You don't have to worry. I mean, I think we had to kick like 2 people out of 8,000 out the entire time, which is I think 8,000. I don't know. I'm bad at numbers, but like it was very just wonderful to have that and have that support. Again, this is all journalism as a mental game, and I don't think that's talked about enough. A lot of times it's either you're going to go all in for a story, or you're going to get your toes wet and run away, or you're going to pick the low-hanging fruit of clickbait and then sign off at 5 o'clock and be done. There's a lot of choices to be made in journalism. So I just realized a lot, really, if you take care of yourself and if you take care of your mind, and if you do things that just matter to your health and matter to you, then the job gets done because your whole mind's there, and I forgot where I was going with that, but and they're all supportive of that. Like we've been late so many times with the podcast, and I'll just say like, hey, I'm late. There's no excuse this week. I just procrastinated. And they're like, you're great. Thank you.
And it's so huge. I think people appreciate that, you're like, we're not machines, and you're like, we're real people just doing this. We're not NBC out here on an NBC deadline. We're regular people who are producing a podcast, and people are like, wow, that's they're doing that, and they're number 1 on Apple. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah, and I think another thing with that is like, people, we're not trying to be NBC, and we're not trying we're trying to do our own thing, and surprisingly it has magically worked so far, which is kind of, but people like that vulnerability. People like that style of, we're not perfect, and I'll tell you what's actually going on here, and here's the struggles with this. They appreciate that because everyone's human, and
What's been the most surprising thing that y'all have learned over, we're kind of, we're not at this part of this stage of the Murdaugh trial case is kind of in the books, kind of, but I mean, there's a lot more to go. Like, what's been most surprising over the past 4-ish years that you were like, I never saw this coming, or I never thought we'd learn this?
I don't even know how to begin to answer
There's
that.
like, Liz, is your mind just going to like a million flashbacks?
Yeah.
Like, is it this one? Is it that one?
Is it this one? Yeah. From the very beginning, we used to joke with each other that there was monsters around every corner because every time we learned a new fact that seemed crazy, it would be true. And then we would look up that case or look up this case, and then we would find it was things looked pretty shady. And then that's the thing, like when we say the thing like we were right, it's really, we're not joking because we were, but it's this feeling of like, how were we right? Because it's sort of like the whole time you're just like, how is this a real thing? How is this really possible that we could sit and talk about this for so long and say, this is what this looks like. Has to be what's happening. And then to have that validated by a source who's like, oh yeah, that's actually true. So the surprising thing to me, I think, is actually that we weren't wrong. Even though I know that how we vet our sources and I know how we do our work, there's still that feeling, even though you know you're right, when you hear in the trial them talking about facts that you've reported before, there's simply that you just knew already and didn't report, just to be like, wow, we actually did know that. So it's, I mean, I don't know, that maybe that's just not having self-confidence there, but it's that's the more surprising thing, that you can be right about things that are so crazy.
There's been several times where I think the best example that I can think of, Liz and I, we would go to dinner and get sushi like a lot and talk about the Murdaugh case back in 2019. And I think it was at sushi, but one night we like basically guessed what happened at the hospital that night.
I know.
Like Liz and I predicted that spot on. Like, I bet he was flashing his badge. I bet he was going around telling the kids, blah. I mean, everything. And
wow.
We both found out individually through different sources and called each other like, oh my God, this happened and that happened. And I'm like, we were right about this. We were right about it. Because that was just straight, like, just taking behaviors that we knew and imagining what was going on and with each other. And then we saw it in public documents of like, and then seeing the video. All layers of that validation were just insane to me, because like going from a source says it's right, okay, and then public documents say that definitely happened, and then seeing it on a video on, I think the HBO documentary was the first time that we saw it. But yeah, that's been crazy. I mean, the most unpredictable thing, I would have never in a million years guessed that Maggie and Paul would be murdered. That was still. And Liz was my first call that morning. Well, she called me 100 times and I was sleeping.
She's in Puerto Rico. She's on vacation.
It was terrible.
And I worked for the sheriff's office, and I got the call, and I can say it now, from Mark Tinsley at 1 something in the morning. And it was just so hard to believe, but I had nothing because she wasn't there. And so it was like, oh my God, Mandy's in Puerto Rico. Like, and I work for the sheriff's office. I can't go to Moselle. Like, so it was just this feeling of like, I felt so lost and adrift in that moment because I didn't have her to call up and wake up. And that was, if we could redo anything, maybe that would be the moment you came back.
I would have
earlier,
or I just would have slept with my phone on. Like, I just would have put my phone on vibrate, because I definitely would have heard it that night. It went off like a million times from you and like 7 other people. My phone, I've never looked at my phone and been like, oh my God,
something happened. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but it's also funny. We looked back on text messages. Liz would just periodically text me throughout the night that night. And one time you were like, hey, will you please wake up? I have something to tell you. You went between like, oh my God. And then like, hey, would you mind calling me? You were just going through the motions in the night.
Like mental telepathy through
Like when
the
you
phone,
get a
like,
second, could you give me a ring?
Yeah,
Like,
Jesus.
totally not.
if you're getting this vibe, wake up. Oh my gosh.
God.
With social media, like how has social media changed the way you approach what you do?
Whew.
Because you both are fabulous at communicating on, Twitter with your fans and sometimes not so much your fans, and getting so much great information out there and gaining information.
I've kind of been lucky in the sense that when I was in college, Twitter was first like becoming a thing, and Facebook was a thing, and not anywhere to the extent where it is now, but it was still something as journalists that we were always taught to keep in mind as a tool for our jobs. And so from day one, I feel like that's just always been integrated in my brain. Like think of the audience and think of who you're talking to and how to communicate with them. And it plays a huge role and just in so many different ways of society. I think about this all the time, that like, it's so crazy that the common person is able to give anybody feedback anytime, and that's hurtful and helpful at the same time. Like I think a lot of like media companies weren't that great a long time ago, but there was no platform for everybody to be like, they're wrong about this,
Right.
and call them out. So it just changes everything. But mentally, it's the best and worst thing in the world. It's great because you have the ability to connect with literally people from all over the world who you would never. I got a tweet one time from a man in Japan who was up waiting for the podcast at like 2:00 in the morning here, whatever time it was. And like, that's crazy. And just so encouraging, and feeling that encouragement from literally people from all around the world. That's the most amazing thing in the world. But then there's always the downside. And the downside is just a million different voices entering your brain. And like Liz said, just saying the worst thing about yourself that you could possibly imagine. And the most hurtful things, people just have access to you, and you have to really figure out how to block walls, but also continue to engage with your listeners and to continue to keep up with the beat, because it can all become like Twitter can be a very, very, very toxic place, especially like at the packet. Were we allowed to block people? Do you remember that?
I didn't start blocking people until doing this, though. I don't think.
Like, I know that a lot of big media companies have a no blocking rule for
I don't remember.
journalists and report. Yeah. And
Wow.
I've heard that a lot of women struggle with that. I mean, in politicians, Mandy, you can't block when you're a politician, and it's just becomes extremely toxic. Well, I remember at the packet, we were told to respond to every email. And
right, we were.
And like some of the emails were like, "You're the worst."
Yeah.
Which
how do you respond
me?
to
I
that?
appreciate it. Like,
Thank you. Duly noted.
Right. And it's just stupid. Like that's just toxic. And it's just giving in to bad behavior. And so there's a lot of it changes everything, and it's really, really good and really, really bad. Liz, what do you have to say about that?
I enjoy the social media community that has popped up around the New York Times spelling bee. Quite a community. But I don't know. I'm not that interested in people's lives. So I know this sounds like so counterintuitive. It's just, there's got to be a shut off point. So like, I do find myself going on Instagram far more than I want to, and Facebook and Twitter, but I don't know. I think I can shut it down, but better than you can, Mandy, because I don't know. It just wasn't, because you have had it so much, like it's so much more in your life than it was in mine. I don't know. I was a married woman when Twitter came out, it just hasn't factored into my life as much. But I will say, like, I've had a lot of conversations lately with friends that just had, like we said earlier, about like, the self-promotional aspect of it is just really difficult for me. And because I feel like I'm inviting people in to criticize me, or I'm inviting them into something that might be special to me, or, I don't want to take that away from me. So yeah, I really, I don't know. It has its place. We need it, but I also don't let it get in my head too much.
Well, what's next for y'all? I know that you just went to New Orleans, Mandy. You got a little bit of a break, right? What a great
Yeah, that's fun. Liz has a trip coming up.
I do. I'm going to Iceland, which is very exciting.
Are you?
Bucket
when are
list
you going? I love it.
In April, just in a couple weeks. Yeah.
So you'll see the
I'm so excited.
puffins.
Yes.
So you'll be there when it's like daylight almost all day.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure actually. It's funny. I am the absent-minded professor in a lot of ways, because I don't check the weather before leaving the house, and that often gets me in trouble. And then I should be Googling about this trip to find out more, but it literally was just a situation where people were going and they're like, "You should come," and I was like, okay, I'll do that. So yeah, I bought some snowshoes and that's it. I haven't really. I need to start thinking about it more, but yeah, it would be fun to do work from Iceland.
That's gonna be so fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're just really trying. There's still it's cliche at this point, but there's still just so much work. We might have found another monster recently, so
yeah.
Stay tuned.
Unrelated monster?
No, that's never unrelated.
Oh, wow.
The tentacles.
We would love it. Yeah, it is like the never-ending what do you call it? Multiplying monster. Like the monster keeps having babies.
Right.
What's it? The Hydra? You cut the head off and 3 more grow in its place?
No, I think it's more just that we didn't understand that the Hydra also had a body that was underground, and it's being serviced by all these other bodies. Like, we just don't know what's happening, but we're gonna figure it out.
Something I fear, because I have too many of those all the time, but something that I worry about, Liz, and I was wondering if you were ever worried about that, because we've kind of really been right recently, and that's been great and validating and awesome. Do you ever I worry that I'm getting too cocky, and I worry that
don't worry about it.
I know.
Can you imagine a guy ever saying that?
I know.
Like a man sitting there, he's like,
don't worry.
I'm thinking.
Dude, yeah, but I worry that we're seeing a lot of we're very deep in the conspiracy web at this point, and we've been right so far. And so I'm like, am I seeing these things just because I've been right so far? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I'm hoping that what we think we're seeing is wrong, but
me too.
100%. It hasn't been yet. So if it's wrong, I would actually welcome that. But yeah, I think, did you notice somebody on Twitter today said, we need to move on from this, and we love your work, you're doing great, but you need to move on to some other story. And it's like, hold on a second here. And I don't know how to say this without insulting people, but I understand there's a huge value of entertainment here. I get that, and I can recognize that, but we also didn't get into this thinking it was an extravaganza of tap show dancing, and this was literally because we wanted this stuff to stop. We don't like that these bullies have gotten away with this for so long. It grosses both of us out. So the work isn't done yet. Maybe it would be done if this were just a podcast that was meant to entertain, and then we would just move quickly on and we'd have another story, but it's not done. This is literally just the first demon that had to be battled. It was a big one, but now we need answers on a lot of other things that kept the system working to this degree in this area. So yeah, I don't know. That might be so disappointing to people, but there's stuff we got to do.
Can I just say that I just have to say that to the world, please never say the words, I'm a big fan, but like me. If you're a fan, be a fan. If you're not a fan, that's cool too. Just move along. There are 2 million podcasts in the world. There are 2 million. There has to be one that fits your little needs. We are doing what we believe is right and that what we believe is our mission. And we don't care what you think of that just because you're a fan. Like, people think that they have this like this higher status in our minds if they identify themselves as a fan, but it's like, I don't care if you think, like, you're still telling me what to do, and who are you? Like, Joe 77299 from Ohio. I don't care.
It's like they feel like they have this obligation because of it, like that you think that they need to hear this. I love it when it's like, this is just some constructive criticism for like, but
right. And where's your background knowledge that you have this constructive criticism that you have to tell me about journalism and podcasting and true crime and all of this other crap that we're dealing with? Like, no, you don't have any. So I'm not interested in your opinions. I'm not.
I love that Brene Brown quote where it's like, if your ass is not in the arena getting your butt kicked, I'm not interested in your feedback. Like, I think about that pretty much every day.
I do too. And I watch the TED Talk sometimes when I need to pump up. I think both of y'all have tweeted that and have retweeted before, because it's a really great fallback, because it's like, wait a minute, you're not even anywhere near the arena.
Right.
I don't care.
Like, you're like 17 blocks down the road, like waiting for an Uber, like back off.
With a drink in your hand, having a good time. And it's like, no.
I always wonder what the motivation is, though, because I remember when I wrote that, like, I wrote this big thing for the packet, and I was very proud of it, and it rolled out over 6 days. And this guy emails me and he says, hey, just so you know, me and my 20 friends who meet for coffee every Wednesday on Hilton Head don't think you should have gotten the front page, and we don't think you're a good writer, and why would you, it was just like the most hurtful. I'm not usually affected by it, but I was just like, why? What? You went to coffee with your alleged 20 friends, and you all talked about me, apparently, not sure why, and then you went and you're like, you know what, I should let her know that. I should let her know that we didn't like it. And it's like, where do you get off? Like, and I don't have a problem with like people expressing their opinions. It's just, you made the effort to make sure that I knew, when you could have just not liked that on your own. What am I supposed to do about it? Like, come and entertain you guys for 20, you and your 20 friends? I don't understand.
Right. So. And I just wish that people would like just take that energy somewhere else. Like, okay, you're not into that. Okay, you're not into my podcast. Don't write me a 7-page email about why you hate it. Just make your own podcast. I don't care. Do your own thing. Right. Figure your own thing out.
Your 7-page email is telling me actually you're a huge fan. So
that's right. And you're an idiot. Like, you're dumb for spending this much time on this. Stop it. But there's people have so much time on their hands, and I think that like something went wrong in our culture, telling them that like attacking other people or criticizing, and then they all resort to like, you should be able to take criticism, and it's like, well, tell me about all the worst emails that you've ever gotten about your random job, because I don't think you have any.
That, buddy. Yeah.
Right. Like,
it is so strange that people, I like to say, I'm totally cool with, informed opinions. The rest is just talking, like it's just talking to hear yourself. And it's, I really admire both of you, because you both have been able to get a lot of criticism that is not deserved at all, and still been able to turn that into all that you all have created throughout. And it's just, it's really inspiring. It really is.
Well, I think something that people should know about that is that this is ironic, but I really believe that like a lot of the trolls that we've gotten and a lot of the pushback has contributed so much to our success at the same time, because people see the pushback and people see the negative things, and they're like, wow, these girls are brave. Like, we want to get behind them. And I mean, a perfect example of that was when everybody was not everybody, lots of mean people were yelling at me about how much they hated my voice. And I addressed it on the podcast on the second episode. Like, hey, if you hate my voice, just don't listen. Don't tell me about it. I'm busy. And I was very scared to do that, but like I was so sick of hearing this from people. But the amount of very successful women who have listened to the podcast and have said, I loved you from episode 2. Like, that's when I knew that I really liked you, because you could just call these people out. So, and you can take, like, it's inspiring that you can take the heat. So we have a lot of trolls out there. And they're probably going to listen to this and tweet about how much they hate us, but they're just fueling our success.
Like, they're going to take bad screenshots of us, like, frozen and like with a bad facial expression.
They will. And like, or just like clip a dumb thing. It's just way too much time on their hands.
If people could only harness that into something positive, like, imagine what kind of world we would live in. Like, seriously.
Amazing.
Right.
And
like,
any idea of what they were revealing to you about their obsession with you, you know, like, you're just letting me know you think about me all the time. Did you really want to say that?
And that they are just jealous. It's jealousy.
Yeah. Right.
And it's like,
Right.
what does it say about your own life? It's just your own life sucks and that you need to work on it. So go do that. Leave me alone.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we kind of close here with talking with both of y'all, what inspires you? What brings you hope? Because you guys bring a lot of hope and inspiration to other people.
Well, I was going to say you guys. I mean, literally having your voices out there, and I think just sort of like, you guys have such a wonderful way of expressing yourselves, and I love what you've been doing so far, and I just think everything you guys contributed, especially during the trial. But I always look to your tweets, and it's such a bizarre thing to say, right? Because like, it's not like we're talking to each other, but it feels like that point of view. And Sarah, I think it's just so important what you do, and Mandy, you know, I love you, and like, yes, so important. And just like we need more voices out there in South Carolina in particular of women who are pointing out the bad spots. And I think everything, like with the Bowen Turner case, to be able to give victims that voice, but also just that bravery of coming up against something, especially in a county like Orangeburg, where, you know, it's just generational. There's a lot of people, just like the rest of the counties in sort of this area, where you're not just going up against this one person, you're going up against all their friends who their parents were all friends. And so I don't think that people actually understand the amount of strength that it takes to do that, and the amount that victims need somebody who's willing to go that length for them. So yeah, that's what gives me hope.
Yeah, I was about to say the exact same thing. I mean, Mandy and I have been friends for a while now. And I can't tell y'all how essential and helpful she was, not only in legal stuff of just being like, does this mean anything? I don't know. Help me, please. And she'd always call and, here, I know it's confusing, but blah, blah, blah. That is extremely helpful for a journalist. And I cannot say that enough. A lot of my friends are now lawyers because I've had to call so many in the last few years, and we just end up talking and becoming friends. But it's just so helpful, because if you didn't go to law school, it's just, you can look at a document as a normal person and think that one thing's going on, but then you call a lawyer and something completely different is going on, and you don't want to look like an idiot. So, but not only that, but just your encouragement and seeing you as a lawmaker for so many years. And I know that you took so much shit in that position. I have always been inspired by you, and it's been awesome for you to be like encouraging me and to, like, you'll see people saying dumb shit on Twitter and you'll be like, Twitter fools, blah, blah, blah. And that makes you feel better. And Sarah, oh my gosh, Bowen Turner case the things would not have happened if it wasn't for you. And that was.
I think the same thing because of you two. And that, I mean,
it required so many women. It required Brett and all of her bravery and vulnerability, and just all of these really women calling this out at the same time, and then all the women that we had behind us immediately. But the fact that Brett had a lawyer to help her. I mean, we can only do so much on our side, and we need more lawyers that actually give a shit and actually care, not only about women, but just, I don't know, humanity. Because we just get to a point where it's like, with the Bowen Turner case, all of the people that made the decisions in that case and let him get probation, it's like, you don't care. You don't care about girls. You don't care about women. You don't care about society as a whole. You care about yourself and protecting it, and protecting the system that is hurting so many people. And that was just such an egregious, but also, I mean, internally, the Bowen Turner case just came on at a weird time in my life where I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like, I didn't know if I wanted to keep going down these rabbit holes and things. And it just gave me a lot of encouragement and a lot of hope. Not only getting results from it, but just meeting you and Brett. And it was just, it was a positive experience in something that was so dark and horrific. And I think the best results ended up happening, which is he's in jail now.
Also the dads. I want to throw that in there too.
Oh, the dads.
Yeah, because that, I think, was just...
I forgot about the dads.
Yeah, the dads. So the dads speaking up for their daughters, and yeah, that was important too.
It was huge. And like, God, that case just was haunting and horrific. And yeah, and seeing the dads was seeing the culture change, though, right? Because it was seeing these men stand up to the system, and it was seeing these men stand up for what's right, and that was just incredible and inspiring.
Those folks inspire me in the work that I do, because it's to be able to have the worst things that you can imagine happen to you and still care about what happens to other people behind you. That just makes, that inspires me, because, some days you're like, you feel like you're banging your head against a wall. You're trying to go up against a system that is not designed for victims or people that support victims. And seeing those people still say, let's keep going. Let's keep doing this. Let's keep drawing attention to this. It inspires me to keep going. And, y'all's support in that case and with the Murdaugh case, it's, see, now I'm getting like, I'm like, a little thing in my throat. Like, I'm not a crier normally, but it's just, I think when women are able to empower each other and encourage each other, there's nothing better than that. And I just appreciate y'all coming on and talking about that.
It's so great.
We look forward to producing podcasts weekly. And if you have any topic ideas, please feel free to contact us on social media at Palm Primetime on Instagram and Twitter. You can find Palmetto Primetime on any platform you listen to your favorite podcast, so be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected, and give us a 5-star review if you like what you're hearing. Thanks so much for listening.
And a big thank you to Ford and Ford Group, who made today's episode possible.